Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Here we are, week 3 of January 2025. And of course, week 3 of every month is the week we dedicate ourselves to improving our jazz improvisation skills. Week 1 always begins with a harmonic analysis of a tune, followed up in week 2 with a melodic analysis. And of course, week 3, this week, we work on developing our improvisation chops. Our harmonic analysis of Fly Me to the Moon, as we do with every tune, explored form, changes, harmonic function, common harmonic movement, and of course, voicings, left-hand shell voicings, as well as two-handed structures. Our essential melodic skills study always looks at the lyrics, melody, fingerings, phrases, and of course, various melodic treatments. And today, our improvisation skills will challenge our ability to create melodic lines using quarter, eighth, sound and silence relationships decorated with, of course, tension. Our 3-week study of every tune that we dive into is pretty thorough and pretty impressive. Oh, and on top of all that, we've initiated a weekly rhythm challenge, a challenge that has us doing some transcribing, some transposing, and some transforming of our approach to melodic playing. Of course, the study and practicing of all these essential jazz piano skills must be governed by a crystal clear thought process that simplifies music conceptually so that we have a legitimate chance of developing it physically, right, in our hands. Now, we achieve this crystal clear thought process by making sure all that we do musically, conceptually, physically, plugs into and adheres to the 7 musical facts. And what are the 7 musical facts? I'm glad you asked. Fact number 1, music is the production of sound. Major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished sound. And sound is produced harmonically, melodically. I like to call harmonic and melodic sound shapes, right? Fact 3, when produced harmonically, we are playing chords, voicings. And fact number 4, when produced melodically, we are playing scales and arpeggios. And fact number 5, when playing scales and arpeggios, we are moving in one of 2 directions, up or down. Fact number 6, we camouflage scales and arpeggios with tension. In other words, notes outside of the key center. And finally, number 7, to make musical facts 1 through 6 interesting, we add rhythm. Those are the musical facts. Those are it. Number 1, music is a production of sound. Number 2, sound is produced harmonically, melodically. Number 3, when produced harmonically, we are playing chords. Fact 4, when produced melodically, we are playing scales and arpeggios. Fact 5, when playing scales and arpeggios, we are moving in one of 2 directions, up or down. Fact 6, we camouflage scales and arpeggios with tension, notes outside the harmony, notes outside the key center. And 7, to make musical facts 1 through 6 interesting, we add rhythm. That's it. And everything that we do, musically, conceptually, physically, must adhere to those 7 musical facts. In other words, we must see what we are doing in relationship to those 7 facts. If we reduce those 7 facts down to key words, here they are: sound, harmony, melody, chords, scales, arpeggios, up, down, tension, rhythm. Let me say that again. Sound, harmony, melody, chords, scales, arpeggios, up, down, tension, rhythm. And this is precisely why we approach our tune study centering around the 7 facts of music. and using 3 very distinct tune learning, what I call phases. Phase 1, harmonic analysis. Phase 2, melodic analysis. Phase 3, improvisation development. And then, of course, this year we are adding an emphasis to each of these 3 phases, which focuses specifically on fact number 7, rhythm. How cool is all of this? It's awesome. Oh, and our rhythm, each week I have a rhythm challenge that is posted in our private jazz piano skills community. The harmonic rhythm challenge, week 1, involves some kind of rhythmic transcribing and comping skills. The melodic rhythm challenge last week that we dove into involves transposing a motif to various key centers. And the improvisation rhythm challenge that we will be doing today, it forces us to develop vocabulary, jazz vocabulary, using quarter-eighth note relationships that will literally transform our soloing because of our vocabulary development. Now, this is why, more than ever, I'm excited about this entire year, 2025. We have an amazing, educationally sound, 3-tier, 3-phase approach that is formulated from a very clear understanding of the 7 facts of music. 7 facts needed to illuminate essential jazz piano skills needed to discover, learn, and play tunes, to play jazz. Oh, what a year this is going to be. 2025 is going to be a great year at jazz piano skills. So today we tackle improvisation development. Today we continue to discover Fly Me to the Moon. We're going to learn how to build quarter and eighth melodic ideas using the changes from Fly Me to the Moon. And we're going to play quarter and eighth lines over the changes of Fly Me to the Moon using sound, silence, and tension. And of course, you will be given a rhythm challenge to develop your improvisation skills. So, as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, or even if you consider yourself a seasoned and experienced pro, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring Fly Me to the Moon, improvisation development, to be very beneficial. But before we get started, I want to, as I always do, welcome first-time listeners to Jazz Piano Skills. If you're new to Jazz Piano Skills, you're new to the Jazz Piano Skills podcast, listening for the very first time, welcome. I want to invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. And your membership will grant you many perks. For example, premium podcast content. You'll get to listen to the entire episode, right? The first half of every Jazz Piano Skills podcast episode is free for everyone, right? We deal with the question of the week. We lay out the educational agenda, the lesson rationale. And the second half of the podcast episode, for members only, presents the lesson content, the video, the demonstrations, and of course the weekly rhythm challenge is included in that as well. So as a member, you get premium podcast content. You also have access to the weekly podcast packets that you can download and print and use when practicing. These are materials that are designed and developed for every weekly podcast episode. The illustrations, the lead sheets, the play-alongs, or the backing tracks. As a member, you also have access to the online sequential courses that are very comprehensive, interactive, self-paced, sequential, tons of interactive learning media, and of course, video demonstrations of the jazz piano skills in all 12 keys. Also, you have access as a Jazz Piano Skills member. You have a reserved seat in the weekly master classes, which are held every Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Of course, I know that's not a great time for everyone around the world, but if you cannot attend the class, no big deal. The classes are recorded, and you can check out and listen to the audio recordings as often as you wish, whenever you wish. So you also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, have access to the online private Jazz Piano Skills community, which hosts a variety of episode-specific forums as well as general jazz forums. It's tons of great member feedback and assistance as well within those forums. Great fun. And finally, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, you have unlimited educational support, private, personal, and professional, whenever and as often as you need it. You can reach out to me through SpeakPipe. There's a web form. My office number at the Dallas School of Music, of course, is a convenient way to reach me, and as well my email address. So anyway, as a member, premium podcast content, podcast packets, courses, masterclasses, private jazz piano community, and unlimited professional support. So all of these amazing privileges, these perks are waiting to help you discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So check it all out at jazzpianoskills.com. And of course, become a member, right, to enjoy all of these perks that are waiting to help you. Of course, if you have any questions, once you get to the website, poking around a little bit, please contact me. I'm happy to spend some time with you, answer any of your questions, and help you in any way that I can. Okay, so on to our question of the week. And this week's question comes from Shannon Mason. Shannon Mason, living in Henderson, Nevada. And Shannon writes, I love the rhythm challenge each week, and I too find it to be harder than anticipated. I had difficulty transposing last week's melodic idea to all 12 keys. I got it done and even recorded some of my playing, but did not post the video in the forums. I am a scaredy cat. That's hilarious, right? Listen, that's what I told you last week. No scaredy cats at Jazz Piano Skills. You can post away. No, it's no scaredy cats, okay? You're going to get tons of support. So, Shannon, post away. Shannon goes on to write, what tips can you give to help me process, transpose melodic ideas to different keys, different chords, so that I don't have to spend time working it out? Thanks for Jazz Piano Skills. I have improved tenfold since joining last year. Wow, Shannon, great question. And I'm super proud of you. You know, the fact that you I'm not proud of you for being a scaredy cat. All right, we'll work through that together. But anyway, I am super proud of you for the fact that you took time to working it out, as you put it, right? Which means that you actually experienced a ton of musical growth. Now I say this because the development of any jazz piano skill requires us to go through a working it out phase before it can become an instinctual muscle memory type of endeavor, right? So there's always a working it out phase. So all that to say that you have taken the necessary first steps towards transposition being an actual oral experience as opposed to a mathematical working it out process. Okay, so congrats. Now, with that being said, here are some practical tips that I would offer to help you with your development of transposition skills. Number one, are you ready? Number one, paper practice. Huge. I've said it many times on many podcast episodes that the practice that you do away from your instrument will be, without questions, some of the best practicing you will ever do. And I call that paper practice. That's part of that working out process that you mentioned, right? So I would say to you, when you do your paper practice, you know, sitting on your sofa, sitting at the kitchen table, sitting on the back porch, whatever, right? Wherever you are, I would say, ask yourself, can I spell all 12 major scales? Can I spell them? Can I spell those major scales as easily as I spell my name, right? So that would be the first step in paper practice, spelling of your major scales with ease, with ease. Those are your keys, right? So when I talk about scales, I talk about keys. Those are synonymous terms. So knowing your keys is going to be a huge part of you being able to easily transpose, okay? The same goes with spelling arpeggios, right? Harmonic structures that are found within those scales, right? The chord scale relationships, in other words. Do you know what the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, 4, 5, 6, and 7 chords are of each major scale? Can you spell those chords with ease, right? So that kind of paper practice, that kind of time invested and spent studying away from the instrument is time very well spent. In fact, it's absolutely essential. If you try to bypass that process, which many people do, you find yourself running in place and never, ever, ever getting better, right? So you're kidding yourself if you think you can just bypass paper practice and just go to the instrument and sit at the instrument and make headway, right? I've said this as well. It is very difficult to ascertain knowledge, process knowledge, and apply knowledge simultaneously, right? Think about that. Ascertain knowledge, process that knowledge, right? And apply that knowledge simultaneously. And that's what most people do when they sit at the piano bench. They're trying to do all three of those things at the exact same time. Good luck. Good luck, right? So spend time away from the instrument where you can ascertain and process knowledge comfortably, right? Then when you go to the keys, you're going to find that the application of that knowledge will be much quicker and much more efficient. So after you've done your paper practice, you get to the keys. I like to do an exercise. I call it moving motifs. Moving motifs, right? So you have a melodic idea like the one I presented last week for you to move around. And I would say before diving in and trying to move the motif, ask yourself a few questions. Number one, have what I call sound awareness. You know, is this motif a major motif, minor, dominant, half diminished, diminished, right? That motif has a sound. What is it? Right? Be consciously aware of the sound of the motif. Likewise, be aware of the function. Right? For instance, like last week, that motif that I presented last week in the rhythm challenge, right? That was a minor motif, but it was Aeolian mode. Right? It could have been Dorian, it could have been Phrygian, right? But it was specifically Aeolian mode. So it's important to know where that sound is coming from, the function of that sound, that motif. It doesn't exist. It doesn't enjoy autonomy, right? It's coming from somewhere, from some key, from some scale. That's why the paper practice is so important. I would also then be aware of the motif, the entry point awareness, right? Knowing where is that within that sound, where is that motif starting? So starting on the root, the third, the fifth, the seventh, the ninth, the 11th, the 13th. Where does that motif sound begin within that sound, right? And likewise, then, what about the destination point of that motif? And where does it end? So, this is all kind of part of the working out that you mentioned, but it's the type of working out that quickly you process this. You get to a point where you're processing everything I'm talking about very, very quickly, and much more so orally as time goes on. There's a tipping point where it moves from a intellectual exercise to an oral exercise, right? It turns from being mechanical to artistic, but that takes time. And I would say to you, the paper practice that you spend, and then the intentionally moving motifs. You can take any little melodic idea from any tune and use that as the motif, and then move that motif around, being aware of the sound, being aware of function, being aware of the entry point and the destination point of that motif. If you do that kind of study, if you do that kind of practicing, you will find transposition becoming easier and easier and easier. So Shannon, great question. And as always, right, if more clarification is needed, if you want to dive into this topic a little bit further, by all means, contact me. Do not hesitate to reach out. As always, I'm happy to spend some time with you and help you in any way that I can, but you are on the right track. Working it out is not a bad thing. It is a great thing, and I congratulate you on that. All right, so let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's discover, learn, and play Fly Me to the Moon. So let's do a little improvisation development. Okay, as always, when studying, when learning any tune, I approach it the same way. And again, genre makes no difference. Jazz, rock, folk, R&B, country, pop, right? Makes no difference. I go about learning a tune the same way. First, most important, listen. And I like to listen to various artists. I always think of my listening list in 3 camps: vocalist, instrumentalist, and of course, pianist. And within those camps, musicians from various genres as well, not just jazz musicians. So if somebody's playing Fly Me to the Moon, I want to hear it. I don't care what genre they consider themselves to be part of. Makes no difference. So I do a lot of listening. After I listen, I do harmonic analysis, just like we did 2 weeks ago, where I'm looking at form and changes and function, common movement, voicings of the tune. Then I'll turn my attention to a melodic analysis like we did last week. I'll transcribe the melody. I don't learn it from a lead sheet. No, I transcribe the melody, learn it by ear. I check out the phrases. I like to look at target notes within the phrases. I explore various treatments, traditional jazz treatments like the ballad, the bossa nova, swing. And then, of course, I always then follow that up with some improvisation exploration or improvisation development like we're going to do today, right? Which could involve some chord scale relationships, arpeggio and scale movement through the various sounds, and, of course, tension. So it's pretty thorough, pretty complete approach. It's the same approach that I use all the time. Listen, harmonic analysis, melodic analysis, improvisation development. So, this week we turn our attention to our improvisation development of Fly Me to the Moon. So the educational agenda for today is as follows. Number 1, we're going to, of course, listen to some definitive recordings of Fly Me to the Moon. Number 2, we will construct stationary quarter and eighth note strings through the changes of Fly Me to the Moon. Then number 3, we will intentionally insert what I call mathematical and random silence into our quarter and eighth note strings. And 4, we will then incorporate tension into our quarter and eighth note strings. So when we're all done today, we will have experienced the evolution of developing jazz improvisation language necessary for improvising. Okay? And that's thrilling because once you understand how to begin developing vocabulary, the sky's the limit. Now, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills member, I just want you to take a few minutes right now. I want you to hit that pause button, and I want you to download and print the podcast packets for this episode. These are the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs. And now again, right, your membership grants you access to the premium content for every weekly podcast episode, which of course includes all of the educational podcast packets. And I mention it every week that you should have these packets in your hands when listening to the episode to get the most out of it and to maximize your musical growth. And of course, you should have these materials sitting on your piano when practicing. Okay, so now that you have your podcast packets, I want you to grab, as always, we start with our lead sheets. And in your lead sheet packet, you should have nine lead sheets. And I just want to walk through those very quickly. Lead sheet 1 is where I present a stationary quarter note string. Lead sheet 2, a mobile quarter note string in motion. Lead sheet 3, you'll see this is where we start to insert mathematical silence into the string. Lead sheet 4, random silence we insert. And then lead sheet 5, we turn our attention, lead sheets 5, 6, 7, and 8, we turn our attention from our quarter note strings to eighth note. So starting with lead sheet 5, we have an eighth note string. Lead sheet 6, you'll see there motion or mobile eighth note string. 7, lead sheet 7, mathematical silence is inserted. Lead sheet 8, random silence is inserted within our string. And then finally, lead sheet 9, we put it all together. We see it all kind of come together. The quarter eighth note combination line with tension added as well. So we got quarter eighth notes, sound, silence, tension, right? Wow. So we had a lot to dissect to get through these 9 lead sheets, and plus I have demonstrations for each one of these lead sheets to go through as well. So, wow, we got a ton to get done. So, at this time, I usually would play a definitive recording of our tune, but I've moved the listening from the podcast episode itself. I have moved the listening to the Jazz Piano Skills forums, community forums, right? And again, there are a couple reasons for this. One, I want to be able to suggest more than one tune. So I have several that will be listed there that you can check out. And then, of course, I want to preserve as much time as possible within the episode for educational content, for teaching. So head on over to the community at this time and spend some time before we go any further. Spend a little time listening to the recordings that I've provided links for to enjoy Fly Me to the Moon. And once you've listened to my recommended recordings, grab your lead sheets and let's grab lead sheet 1. Okay, so here we go. Lead sheet 1. Lead sheet 1. Quarter note string through the changes of Fly Me to. Thank you for listening to Jazz Piano Skills. The remaining premium content of this episode is available to Jazz Piano Skills members at jazzpianoskillspodcast.com. Visit jazzpianoskills.com to learn more about membership privileges and become a Jazz Piano Skills member. Thank you.